Welcome, champions. While I have finished the seat-by-seat tier lists, there were a couple of champions that got released along the way that slipped through the cracks. I'm here to cover them and then wrap it all up with one cohesive list for all the champions in a single tier list. You might ask, why didn't you do that in the first place? Well, if you've seen my videos, I like to break down and overview each champion I rank, so you fully understand why I'm putting them where I'm putting them. Doing that for over 100 champions in a single video would have been madness, I tells ya. And remember, if you're just here for the full tier list, the timestamps are always there for you. So instead of my usual working down alphabetically, we're going to talk about the most recently released champion and work backward from there by release date. That means today we're starting with Kent, the neutral good tiefling rogue in seat 4. He's a DPS and positional support, so right out of the gate he's a glimmering beacon to use with Artemis. But we'll get to that. To start, let's talk about that positional formation ability, Tokens of the Departed, where he keeps a soul trinket of the highest level boss defeated in each campaign, and increases the damage of those slotted in his column per trinket. Now, this sounds a little crazy at first, but there are some limitations to keep in mind. First of all, it's not really every campaign, as it counts all of the main campaigns: Grand Tour, Tomb of Annihilation, Dragon Heist, Descent into Avernus, Rime of the Frost Maiden, Witchlight, Xerxes. Then after that, anything else is lumped into one category, whether it be time gates, events, etc. And keep in mind, these are an additive stack, so even once you start reaching some big numbers, the scaling really tapers off. So all you want to do is reach to your highest possible wall in each of these campaigns and kill the highest level boss you possibly can. It can even be a boss you've killed in that current run, he just needs to be present for it, dying at any point. And something to keep in mind for those that might be able to push much farther without him in their formation and can't quite take down a boss while he is, hit-based health bosses can be taken down with just about anyone. Now he also gains Extra, where he increases the damage of all champions based on your current achievement bonus. A nice little boost, but even when you're almost finished with all of the achievements in the game, nothing super crazy. For his own DPS, he gets Remembering the Old Days, where he scales his damage each time he attacks in the current area, capping at 25 stacks. They stack multiplicatively, and have a post-stack multiplier, but again they taper off a bit because the gear slot affects the post-stack. Overall, his kit is effective, but as a DPS himself, he does gain a few multipliers, but they all don't really scale that hard. His specialization is a choice between increasing the attack bonus of Tokens of the Departed by 100% for each Rivals of Waterdeep champion slotted in the formation. As he is a part of that affiliation, he will always count as 1. Or Potent Poison, where anytime he attacks an enemy and doesn't kill it, it takes bud damage over time. Between his ultimate and the second specialization, he becomes an excellent source of bud damage. But the first will always offer more output from token. His ultimate, by the way, changes the weather to fog for 30 seconds. Whenever he attacks, a ghostly spirit is summoned and attacks an additional enemy if possible, dealing bud damage. He's a decent damage dealer, but not top tier, offering some good upfront damage, with scaling that tapers off compared to some others. But his support utility is quite good, and being that he is a rogue that is a positional buffer, he's great for Black Viper's Aura of Infamy, Arkan's Usurp, and Artemis's Observance. Really, the only thing that holds him back from really soaring up is his tapered scaling. In the way a lot of people say some champions are broken with how they scale, I think Kent is a good example of a new, rock-solid A-tier champion for everything he offers to the game, without having any broken scaling. But for those looking into the late game, he might start falling off. But then again, in the really late game, that doesn't matter anymore. Oh yeah, and while it's a minor spoiler with Virgil on the horizon, it's not a big one because they announced his existence and we know that if Virgil qualifies for an adventure, Kent will be usable as well with Inseparable. The minor spoiler is, the biggest restriction will be both of their low strength ability scores. Other than that, he's good to go for most things, so Kent's availability is really on point. Egg. It's time for Egbert, the chaotic good Dragonborn Paladin in seat 7, who has a plethora of roles, serving as gold, healing, support, and tanking. His support comes from Atone for the Past, where he has a number of points equal to the number of lawful champions in the formation, minus the number of chaotic champions, not including himself. He will increase the damage of all champions behind him based on the number of points he has squared. This is calculated either by the positive or the negative, so the goal is to reach either 9 or -9. You can make this easier with his first of 2 specialization choices, which will make neutral champions along the lawful/chaotic axis either count as adding to it or subtracting to it. So you're either trying to lock him into a lawful neutral team for the positive or a neutral chaotic team for the negative. And as a quick note, his affiliation is full of chaotic and neutral. So if your goal is to use the Ox Venturers Guild members, you're wanting to lock into the neutral/chaotic. This is also boosted by More the Merrier, where he increases the effect for each enemy on screen and each enraged stack. At either 9 or -9, this is still just a slightly above average buff, so you really don't want to fall below that. Not only that, but his other formation abilities scale with these atonement points. For his healing, he gets Lay on Hands, where after he attacks, as long as there is a champion below half health, he will heal the most damaged by an amount multiplied by the absolute value of his atonement points. For his gold find, he gets Golden Scales, where he increases the global gold find by an amount multiplied by the absolute value of the number of atonement points he has. His second specialization choice locks him onto either being a support, healer, or gold find champion. The first affects his primary attack, which is a bomb he throws at the nearest enemy, knocking back in an AoE, which will now also make them create a smoke cloud that when enemies are inside will take more damage from attacks and have a 50% chance to miss with their own attacks. The second will make his heal target the 2 most damaged champions at 100% increased effectiveness, and lastly increasing the effect of Golden Scales by 100% for each Ox Venturers affiliated member slotted, stacking multiplicatively. Considering the affiliation and all the gold find that comes with some of those champions, this is a very effective boost. His ultimate summons his deity, Lavesh Move. Yes, a cow from the clouds, shining radiant light causing enemies to take damage and allowing champions to deal 1000% more damage for 20 seconds. Overall, he's not the best tank support or healer, but he's efficient in everything he does. Having a tank in Seat 7 finally is nice, and his availability isn't the best, but it's decent. Basically, his theme is not the best, but good. Sounds to me like a solid B+. Next up is Voronika, the chaotic evil Eladrin druid in Seat 1, and the first of 3 Black Dice Society members in this video. She is fairly unique, but the core of her buffing potential is from Calculating Guidance, where she will increase the damage of champions in the column in front of her for each Black Dice Society or evil slotted champions in your formation. It starts by stacking additively, but will stack multiplicatively when she completes her search for the crown. Also keep in mind there is a feat to make it 2 columns in front of her if you need that extra column's reach. She can further boost this with ultimate power, where each use of an ultimate attack while she is slotted in the formation will beef up Calculating Guidance. So what's this search for the crown? Well, she gains 3 goals each and every run. The first, to defeat 2,000 enemies with her inner circle champion slotted in your formation. The second is to reach level 750. And lastly, for the formation to use 50 ultimate attacks. Upon completing these goals, she transforms into her Dark Lord form, which unlocks her ultimate attack that damages and pushes back enemies, while those who survive do reduced damage to your formation, as well as improving her base attack, making it deal bud damage over time. So you probably have another question now. What's this inner circle? Her first of 2 specialization choice picks a champion at random to be her inner circle champion. They will receive the Black Dice Society affiliation membership once selected if they weren't already, meaning they will qualify for things like Nahara's Strong Society, which we'll get to shortly. Her second specialization choice will either buff the inner circle champion based on their roles, or buff her Calculating Guidance by 100%, while she is in her Dark Lord form if you don't slot the inner circle champion, just in case your selections were garbage. With the first pick, if your inner circle champion has the support tag, they will have their positional formation abilities increased by 200%. A tank will have 10 more to their overwhelm limit, and most important, if she picks a DPS, they will receive a second personal DPS increase equal to her Calculating Guidance, which is actually an amazing buff. The chances of her selecting your DPS are low, but if she does, go for it, baby. The drastic difference of if she chooses your DPS or not, and how rare that is, does make it hard for her to be really good in a persistent way. Without it, she's more in the high B range, but with it, she's in the high A to S tier in buffing power. Oh yeah, and remember, she counts as dead both in and out of her Dark Lord form, so she synergizes incredibly well with Desmond in Seed 4. Now we've got Valentine, the true neutral half-elf sorcerer in Seed 5, with the roles of Gold and Support, the second of the 3 Black Dice Society members in this video. She scales specifically with positional formation abilities. First with Tregram, where she buffs champions with the DPS tag, buffed on how many positional formation abilities she herself is receiving, so you want them not only affecting your DPS, but also Valentine. And to further this sentiment, she also gains Socialite, where any positional formation abilities that she is receiving will be duplicated, meaning one of 2 things. First, she gives any champion with the DPS tag a copy of positional formation abilities she is receiving if they are not. If they are, she will instead boost its effectiveness. When it comes to Artemis, understand that the copied effect happens after observance, so he cannot observe any copied effect from other DPS champions. However, he will get the scaling from the boosted effect. So while she isn't ideal for Artemis in that she herself isn't a DPS, and she doesn't have a positional formation ability, she does boost those he is receiving as long as she is also receiving them. So at a certain point, if you boost her Socialite up enough, she can work really well with him, though this does take some hefty investment. Her gold comes from A Life of Leisure, where she will increase the gold find of your formation for each positional formation ability affecting her, stacking multiplicatively, and her ultimate deals damage and stuns enemies for 4 to 8 seconds for 4, during which they take 1000% more damage from all sources. And her specialization choice is between either increasing Tragram's pre-stack damage bonus by 25%, or a unique synergy with Tatiana by always having her receive Tatiana's faithful friend and boosting it by 200%, or increasing A Life of Leisure by 200%. Overall, she's really good. Tregram offers a girthy buff, while properly setting up Socialite will scale all of your other positional formation abilities. Finding a place for her to be in that ideal setup can be a struggle sometimes, and she shares a seat with Briv. Still, I think she's a firm A, with the potential to scale incredibly well with Socialite, but requiring lots of investment. Lastly is Nahara, the chaotic neutral Aasimar reborn warlock/bard in Seat 3, who serves as DPS and speed, and the third of 3 Black Dice Society members here. She has a persistent scaling buff in Who Am I, where each area completed while she is slotted in the formation will increase her damage in an additive stack, carrying over through resets. It's a very low number and additive, so it tapers off real hard at a certain point. Her speed and more damage comes from To Amuse or Avenge. She has a meter that tracks her levity stacks, red representing her speed aspect, and black representing the damage aspect. She gains a levity stack each time she's able to attack and kill at least one enemy. If she attacks and doesn't kill, she will lose one. She gains more damage the fewer levity stacks she has, and reduces the area progression requirement by an amount for each levity stack she does have. So, in the lower levels when she's one-shotting everything, she will serve as a solid speed champion, and then transitioning into dealing more damage as they stop getting one-shot. For speed, it's worth capping her levity stacks at the first area, so from then on she's reducing the maximum amount she can for each area after, which is a good time to slot Shandy and let her dash come online. Something to note about this ability: the gear slot tied to Amuse or Avenge only increases the damage aspect, so you get the most you're going to get out of her speed right away as far as scaling goes. For her damage, she also gains Strong Society, where she gains a multiplicative damage bonus for each slotted Black Dice Society member in your formation. This was the formation ability I was talking about with Veronika's Inner Circle champion, who she chooses will become part of the BDS, and will also count for this. Her ultimate has her take off to the air and deal 1000% more damage, and has a 50% chance to stun enemies for 2 seconds, active for 15 seconds. Her specialization choice is between making Who Am I count for 3 times for every area cleared, increasing Strong Society by 400%, while also allowing all BDS into a Strahd variant if they weren't otherwise allowed, or increasing the area reduction to Amuse or Avenge. She does have a couple of problems. One, no matter how you look at her, she has poop for damage as a DPS. Also, she relies heavily on the Black Dice Society, which honestly is a great affiliation, but Desmond in Seat 4 scales the best while actively using someone else in Seat 3, Spurt. Well, if you're using Nahara, you can't exactly use him. She does have a dedicated spot for a speed formation, no doubt. And the idea of bringing in the BDS into a Strahd variant can be good, but it also means she has to act as your DPS, and she's a bad DPS. So, I'd say her speed is like A to A+, and her damage is like D to F. So we'll average her out into a C+, but know that she is excellent for early speed, pushing to your wall, and you should absolutely use her for that. And there we have that. That is all of the champions I missed along the way doing my seat tier lists. From now on, I will likely cover them as they come up and add them to what I'm going to do now, as we transition into the tier list of every champion in the game. Know that my goal here is to look it over and see if there might be some changes here or there. So, let's get to it. Sorry for the spook, it is that season. But you're gonna have to deal with this mug again for a little bit because I felt like this bit is another one that kind of required an additional stamp, if you will. Because we're just going to be going over the full tier list from the entire series right here, without the overviews. I wanted to show it as one cohesive list, but I'm probably going to do a little tinkering too now that I'm seeing everything in its entirety. And this is a good time to remind, I rank the champions based on their roles, how well they perform in them, and what they offer to the game as a whole. So while someone like Jarlaxle is somewhere in the middle, his gold is really good, and some of you might think he should be S tier for that reason. That's not how I do these rankings. We're going to be using Trumler's tier list from the Discord. I'll also have a link in the description below, should you choose to make a tier list of your own. Starting at the top with the S tier, I'm looking it over and I gotta say, it's looking pretty good. Ayla does remain in the S tier because I do believe her Storm Soul has been fixed. In the S tier, we have Briv, Orkira, Kroll, Averin, Artemis, Baloth, Azaka, Nova, Penelope, and Ayla. Let's move right on to the A+, where we have Beetle and Grim, Grama, Freely, Zorbu, Krond, Blushi, Dob, now Valentine, Shandy, Human, Sentry, now Kent, and Turiel. Looking over it again now, I feel like Turiel doesn't belong in that A+, which was probably more in the mid-A. We're going to move Turiel to just below Jim in the A-, I believe. And then Kent will remain there, symbolizing that flat A. I think that's good. I think that's a good little tinker. Moving on to the A-, we have Merylwen, Alindra, Talon, Jim, now Turiel, Whittle, Brunner, Havilar, Quillick now because of the seasonal change, Melf, Strix, and Catti-brie. Looking at this now, I think Brunner is slightly overvalued. He was the very first champion I ever covered. I think just because he was that first seat, he is decent. He offers the gold find a decent buff, but I don't really think he's quite breaching into that A tier. I think I'm gonna move him to B+. Whoop. We'll figure out exactly where when we get there. Which is now B+, Spurt, Brunner, Voronika, Egbert, DM, Deacon, Tatiana, Dragonbait, Celise, Rust, Ashara, Okoria, Desmond, Xeraphon, Tyrell, Berwyn, Regis, Warden, Donner, Omen, Cathris, Makos. Looking at that now, I believe I'm going to cave in a little bit. I do think Ashara should probably swap places with Brunner. I think that's a better fit. Brunner down in B+, and Ashara up to A-. I do believe the nerf hurt her. I do believe she's a good DPS, don't get me wrong. Whenever I make this argument, people think I'm saying she's not a good DPS. She is. She's top 4. But I do think she gets outperformed by Krond, Zorbu, and Artemis. At the end of the day. On equal playing fields. But I do believe that's where she belongs now. Yeah, alright. So we covered B+, storming right through. B-, Nrak, Morgaine, Rhea, Gazric, Hitch, Eliwick, Nordom. Now we'll finish through for Birdsong. Yeah, I do believe Dahani's gonna move. I do believe I overvalue Dahani. Arkin, Korth, Jaheira, Stokey, Brig, Oriza, Drist, Jarlaxle. Yeah, I think Dahani is going to go down. I think she's going to the C+. I think the rest of B- is right in there. No, I think that's kind of it's an interesting tier for some reason. I don't know why it stands out to me. That bracket is kind of interesting. But we'll move on. For now, I think that's good. Moving on to C+, we've got Naeli the Gatekeeper, now Dahani, and now Nahara, Calliope, Vi, Torogar, Shaka, Nox, Yorvin, Farida, Prudence, Mihen, and Dadius. Looking at that now, I am half tempted to put Torogar in B-, but I do think he belongs in C+. Just preach, please let him scale with his own preach. But I was talking to a certain someone earlier, and they made a decent argument for Farida to be moved to B- over Prudence. Which is kind of funny when you think about it. But the argument was sound, and I believe Farida's going to shift into B-. Moving on to C-, we have Celeste, Sasaspia, Polton, Lazaps, Binwin, Lucius, Black Viper, Minsk, Corazon, Vlania, and Delina. Delina? I still don't actually know. I should probably figure that one out. Alright, I cave. Binwin is joining his dwarven buevo, his dwarven brother. I love the Berserker, but I do think I slightly overvalued him in C-. Moving on to D, we have Puent, Binwin, Viconia, Xander, Kreidel, and Ishii. I do think they all belong in D. I think that's a solid D tier if I'm gonna be honest. And now E and F were broken up. I think out of the F tiers I have, I really think Nerds is the only one that's gonna go into E. Because they really would dip into F if it wasn't for Artemis. And then we have the F tier. You know what? There were enough people pining for Esmeralda. We'll shift her into the E tier. The tiniest bit of speed she can offer, the little bit of armor breaking she does offer, we'll allow that to rise out of F tier. But in F, with Neris, Walnut, Evelyn, Wolfgar, Aunt Jemimala, and Rosie, that's a pretty solid F tier if you ask me. And we have Beetle and Grim broken up, which I'm going to keep them together. That's a good option though. And the future Virgil, which I haven't gotten my hands on yet, so I cannot rank, but I will when he comes out. And there we have it, the absolute full tier list. S to F, all champions in the game. Thanks for coming in and watching. Thanks for putting up with this. I still have some plans for the future with this game, and of course I will be covering the champions as they come out, but now I will be doing it via this tier list. And if there are any changes along the way, and all of the future seasons will be compiled within this list. Thanks for watching. Have a hell of a time out there, champions.